Today we're going to be talking about the backwards design curriculum model. It's curriculum that makes sense. And I know what you're thinking. Backwards doesn't really make sense because we've done it for so long where we just teach lessons, and then all of a sudden we have a test. It's kind of disjointed and there's no unity to it. So we're going to do what Stephen Covey says, and we're going to keep the end in mind as we're making our curriculum. So what in essence is the backwards design? Told me kind of a little bit about it. We're going to start at the end. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means we are going to identify our desired results. That just means we're going to have big ideas and skills that the students are going to need to know. And once we've identified those skills, we are going to determine a way that is acceptable evidence for those students to demonstrate that they know what they're doing, and we're going to do that through assessments and different tasks. And from there, we're going to have to plan the different learning experiences the students are going to receive in the class. So that's great and all, but what does it really mean? What are we going to be doing when we're implementing this process? Well, we're going to first identify the unit TEKs that we want to be addressing in the unit. Then, once we've identified those, we're going to create a unit assessment. We're also going to create a weekly assessment. And then we are going to create lesson plans to help the students be successful on those assessments. And once we have those lesson plans in place, you guys are going to actually get to go and teach what we've been doing. So, first off, how is identifying the unit TEKs going to be helpful? Well, it's going to give us a specific focus on what we're doing. We are going to group the TEKs in a way that makes sense for our students. So we're going to be talking about rational numbers and integers over here. We're not just going to go grab, for instance, say plotting points on a coordinate grid. We're not just going to randomly throw that into our unit. And by doing that, we're going to keep the unit lengths about 6 weeks long, and you're going to have a set amount of time that you can spend doing what you need to do. And in these units, we are going to have both readiness and supporting standards. That's going to be important. So now, once we've identified what we want in our unit, now it's time to create the unit assessment. It's going to be cumulative. And as we know, that just means it's going to encompass everything that is in the unit. Now, what is this assessment going to do? Well, it's going to give us feedback. Did we actually accomplish our goal that we set for ourselves? And are the students successful? Was our student successful? And if they weren't successful, what do we need to spiral in to the next unit so when it comes time for the STAR test, our kids know what's expected of them, and we know we have prepared them adequately for that. Now, we have to, the questions that are going to be on these assessments, we have to match the verbs used in the TEKs, make sure those questions are being answered on the test. So for instance, say we have 6.2c, and it is locate, order, and compare integers and rational numbers on a number line. Well, our verb there is locate, order, and compare integers and rational numbers. That's what we're going to do those three things with integers and rational numbers. Okay? So we're not going to throw in a question that has students adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, because that's not what the verb is used. So we want to make sure our questions match those verbs and make sure that they're still doing the same task at hand. All right. Now we're going to have 60% readiness TEKs and 40% supporting TEKs. The reason it's going to be laid out that way is because on our state assessment test, readiness TEKs are tested 2 to 3 times, and supporting questions are 1 and maybe not even at all. test it. Okay? So that's why we're going to lay it out in this format. Now, it needs to be unified for all the teachers. Okay? Miss Harris is going to teach this, Miss Mosley's going to teach this. No, that can't happen if it's unified. Everybody has to be teaching the same. I'm not saying your delivery has to be the same, but you all have to get the students ready for the same test. So our tests are going to be unified and all teachers are getting them the same way. Now, we need to make sure and include the modifications and accommodations that our students receive through their 504 plans and their IEPs. So now we have our unit assessments done. Now we have to get to the weekly assessments. Why are we going to have these weekly assessments? Because they're going to be a guide to the unit assessment. We should be able to predict how the kids are going to do on the unit assessment by how well they've done on the weekly assessment. It's going to give us the feedback we need to make sure we can get those students to be successful on every single assessment. And once again, we need to make sure and include the modifications and accommodation. Now, you get to create your actual lesson plans. What does that mean? Well, it means we have to teach the objectives. We have to teach the TEKS that are in this unit. Remember, we're not going to go grab TEKS that have nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish in this unit. And now, when you're doing that, once you have those TEKS, your activities are going to allow the students to understand what you're wanting them to accomplish. Okay, like I use 6.2C, which is locate, order, and compare. Well, the activities are going to have students be locating, ordering, and comparing different integers and rational numbers. And then, of course, we're going to differentiate because not all of our students are going to learn the same way. You know, you might have a kid that has some sort of he learns better moving his hands, as you can tell. I talk with my hands a lot, so I move around. Probably imagine. Well, you might have a kid like that in your class, and then you also might have a kid that just sits and does independent work. But you've got this kid who likes to move around and he likes to talk with people and he likes to bounce ideas off. So we've got to be differentiating for our students in a way that makes the learning rigorous and relevant to them. And now you get to actually teach, right? You're going to be constantly monitoring and adjusting your lessons that you're teaching. You're going to have informal assessments as you're going. You know, one of my favorites was thumbs up, thumbs down, or if we've got a practice problem on the board and the kids have been talking in groups, and now we're getting to sort of some independent practice where the kids get to talk a little bit, problem on the board, and you've got like A, answer choice A, they can hold up a 1, answer choice 2, or B, answer choice 2 could be B, and they can hold up a 2, and they kind of put it on their chest, as you can see right here, where, you know, it's not up in the air, and somebody else gets, looks around and sees their answer, they do it, hold it on their chest, and they get to see, you get to see that little Timmy over there hold up the wrong answer. He's the only one in the whole class. Well, next time you do that problem, or a problem similar to it, you go over to little Timmy and make sure he is understanding the steps and you're kind of walking him through. And then, if everybody's getting stuff wrong, then you need to adjust your teachings for the students so they can be successful. So then, when you're teaching and doing the practice, this is not graded. Okay, we want the students to get a chance to develop the knowledge and understanding of the skills that we're teaching them. The time to come where they need to demonstrate it is on the assessments. And like I said, we have to differentiate teaching. So why? Why? No, it sounds great, but why are we going to do this? Because it's goal oriented, purposeful. Okay? We know once we start the unit what our goal is. We know exactly what the kids need to be able to do. It's kind of similar to writing a book or maybe writing a paper in class. You don't just start writing because then It's all going to be disjointed and all over the place. So what do? You make an outline, right? Start with the title, you have your categories, and then once you have your categories, you have subtopics, and then those categories become chapters, those subtopics become paragraphs or different chunks, and that leads to a well put together book. But you started with the goal, what you wanted the book to be, and then you had chapters to help you reach that goal, similar to what we're doing here. And then another reason why it works is because the coverage or the amount of time you have. Now, I've never heard a teacher say, I have just had too much time in my class, I don't know what to do with it. Because if you ever have, I want to meet that teacher. um, in high school, what tends to happen is you get a textbook, start on page 1, and you go all the way through the textbook. Well, in elementary and middle school, we might not have near that problem, but what we do have is teachers not looking at the verbs of the objectives and what they're actually supposed to be doing. And so you've got teachers not locating, not putting them in order, and not even comparing rational numbers and integers. Maybe they're just talking about rational numbers and they're not actually doing what the TEAG is talking about. So it's going to give us the time span, the amount that we need for our students to be successful. So how are we going to implement this in our school? Well, we're going to use the backwards design model to create a unit using MathPeaks 6.2a through E and 6.3a through D. And like I said earlier, we're going to have about 6 weeks to do this. All right, let's go get started.